Do you hear that? That's my farm. It's a forest farm. Actually, it's a biodiverse regenerative farm in the heart of the low country. And that's me, snacking on cowpea cover crop that we planted for native animals after our pigs moved through. Hi, my name is Marissa Pecos, and I'm a first generation female farmer. I have no previous farming experience and no farming in my blood. I just have this deep desire to help leave the earth in a better state than which I found it. What started as a 2 acre farm to sustain my family has grown into over 40 acres of a commercial regenerative farm. I've always loved the earth, science, biology, how we're all connected. As I got older, I realized there was a deep disconnect between where our food comes from and how it impacts our planet and our future. So I made it my mission to take a piece of land and restore the forest ecosystem while producing nutrient dense food for my community and my family in the process. In 3 years' time since beginning selling publicly, we've grown, we've scaled, and we've pivoted. We sell our pork, chicken, eggs, honey, and vegetables at local farmers markets, to restaurants straight off the farm, and most recently through our monthly door to door subscription boxes. We've created new facets of our business that fill revenue gaps, like Learn on the Farm, an educational experience for adults and children, and Camp on the Farm, a booming agritourism endeavor that has welcomed thousands of guests to learn and experience what we do. Our most recent addition to the farm is our pavilion, where we've been hosting farm to table dinners and other events. The farm to table dinners feature local chefs that come out and prepare multi course meals with all products from our farm. It's a great way for folks to get to do something different and to be connected to exactly where their food comes from, right in the environment that it's being grown and raised in. But like I said, this isn't how things started for me. When we started our first farm, Ellie was really just a baby. I still worked in corporate America, and I came home every day feeling insanely unfulfilled. Every day I would go to work and give everything I had, and every day I would feel like nothing I would ever do would be good enough. So I would come home and I would pour myself into the land, into our farm, into our daughter. And in that letting go of all the expectations of what success was meant to look like, I started feeling success on our farm. Success for me didn't come from a number on my W 2. Success for me started to feel like my daughter in bare feet, walking through the tomatoes, picking her snacks, feeding her chickens, understanding the rhythms of the earth. And as Ellie learned the rhythms, I found my own. I started feeling more like myself, the person that I had been seeking and searching for all this time. And when I finally found myself buried in the soil amongst the animals next to my daughter, I knew that I was ready to take the next step, to not just help myself, but to help my family and my community in the process. So we took a leap of faith and sold our first 2 acre farm and convinced the bank to lend us the money to buy the 40 acre tract of land that we own now. But this time, this farm would be different. This would be a regenerative farm, a farm where we regenerate native forest ecosystems. The beauty of this land was the same as the challenge. There was nothing here. It was just overgrown, mismanaged timber from years of abuse from the timber industry. We began to burn the trees that we had cleared to create biochar that we would later use to spread back down into the soil to help build our soil back up. We started moving our animals from the old farm to the new farm into forest sections. The chickens and the pigs were the first to touch this land in over 30 years. I started creating no-till garden spaces, mounding up by hand. The same rows exist on the farm now, 2.5 years later. The pigs started to move through the land, clearing any of the underbrush and helping us uproot saplings and thin the forest naturally. And little by little, we started to carve out our farm from the forest. As the drone continues and you see the lines on the left side of your screen, those lines are the original garden. That garden still exists today, except now it looks like this. As a regenerative farm, carbon sequestration is always on the top of our to-do list. In an effort to help sequester carbon in our vegetable production, we use no-till farming. This means that we don't bring machinery or tilling through our garden spaces once they're created. Every time a plow or a tiller hits and breaks the soil, it begins contributing to creating greenhouse gases. So instead of tilling, we spend all of our time in our garden adding more organic matter. From compost to mulching, it's added in. If you walk our gardens, you'll see very little weed pressure. But more importantly, you'll see soil rich in microorganisms, soil that sequesters carbon, soil that produces beautiful food for our community. Our soil in our gardens isn't the only place on our farm that sequesters carbon. We do it through all of our operations. As our poultry moves through forest spaces and through pastures, they too contribute to carbon sequestration in our soil. As the chickens move through pasture spaces and forest sections, they scratch at the ground and eat some of the green forage. As the chickens move on to fresh pasture, they leave behind their manure as fertilizer. Once the pastures are on rest, they get a chance to grow back, and grow back they do, stronger with deeper rooting systems that sequester even more carbon than before. This is drone footage of one of our chicken pastures after rotation. The green grass space to the top had chickens rotated off of it 2 weeks prior to the bare spaces at the bottom, which the chickens had just recently moved off of. And where did our flock of 350 egg-laying chickens move? They moved here to this new 1-acre section, where they'll spend the next 2 weeks foraging through the fields. And just like all of the other sections, when we move them off, we'll cover crop, and the soil will come back to life with greener grass than ever before, with more biodiversity than ever before too. But there's one important player on our farm that we can't forget about. Perhaps the most important player of all, the trees. Just because we had to clear pasture spaces and thin our forests to open up so sunlight could get through to help green grass and other forage grow beneath doesn't mean we don't value the trees. In fact, we value them most of all. The trees provide more for our earth, the environment, and the ecosystem than we could ever provide. The trees provide food for the native ecosystem as well as our animals from the nuts and fruits they drop. They also provide shade and shelter, and they help sequester carbon. But they also play a role with transpiration cooling in helping us battle climate change locally. When you walk the forests of our farm, you will see that the temperature is 10 to 15 degrees lower in the forest, giving us a chance to provide a life for our livestock unlike any other. It's inevitable that we had to clear. We had to remove invasive vines, trees, and plants. But in sections like this, where pasture's growing back, it's ready for us to start planting native trees again. And someday on our farm, whether it's from the trees that we left behind that produce for the ecosystem, or from the trees that we replanted that help us produce as well, our entire farm will be a 40-acre food forest. A food forest for us, for the earth, for the environment, for habitat for our native animals, and for our livestock to help us feed our community. You can learn more about our farm on our website, visit our social media pages, our YouTube channel, and you can even look for me and my daughter in the 2022 marketing campaigns for Duluth Trading Company.